We welcome those of you who've been reading the New Yorker magazine article just out today entitled "The Rise of the Brazilian Butt Lift." This is the Bob and Kel CleverCast coming to you live from Grant, Minnesota and Los Angeles, California. Today is part one of Brushes with Greatness. Next week, Jim Leinfelder will join us. He's got some Lollapaloozas. So today will be the build-up to his appearance for part two of Brushes with Greatness next week. Today brought to you by a new sponsor. Let's see if I have this correctly. Better Butter. Better Butter always covers the spread. Get it? Now with sea salt. Tonight's Better Butter best bet is the California-Florida NHL game under the total, under 6.5 goals. Believe it or not, there's a service called MGM Bets, which has the Boston Bruins, perhaps the greatest regular season team in the history of the National Hockey League, at plus 375 to win the Stanley Cup. In other words, you give them $100 and Boston Bruins win the Stanley Cup, you go to collect and you will receive $475. Not bad. So Better Butter. Better Butter, proud to be a sponsor of the Bob and Kel CleverCast. It also has come to my attention that another of our sponsors, Closed Doors, the sweatpant that makes you glad that you're a man, has added tearaway trap doors fore and aft for pitchers and catchers, or in the case of the really fancy adult film stars, pitchers and catchers simultaneously. So we thank them for their patronage.
They're a real dual threat.
And like Total Gym, I don't know that you've seen commercials for Total Gym, but they are Chuck Norris approved.
Oh, Chuck.
Yeah. Total Gym is also Chuck Norris approved, but they're not one of our sponsors. I was at a Pep Boys earlier today, and because I can't get these multiphasic exam questions out of my head, despite the fact that feature is history as far as the CleverCast goes, the questions still occur to me. I'm sitting in the waiting room at Pep Boys. Do they have them in Minnesota, the tire replacement places?
I think there are a couple here, yeah. I don't think they're as prominent as they are in the West or East Coast, but still.
They have cartoons of Manny, Mo, and Jack all over the place.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at one of these artist conceptions of Manny, Mo, and Jack, and I'm thinking, I wonder which one of these is Kel's favorite. Manny, Mo, or Jack? Because I've always leaned toward Mo, because I was a Mo guy with the Three Stooges.
Oh, yes.
So Mo's my guy, but maybe yours is Manny and Jack. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm guessing Manny's of the Latino persuasion. So, yeah, there's that. Short for Emmanuel.
Well, he'll be in good company here in Los Angeles. Don't come to Los Angeles unless you really like Mexican people. That would be my tourist advice. Now, we've established, if I'm not mistaken, last week, because apparently Kurt, God love him, has met and befriended a bare minimum of human beings throughout his life, that his brush with greatness is a person who knows a person. It's a person who knows Joel Hodgson, the former host of Mystery Science Theater 3000. I assume Joel Hodgson is still alive. It's not necessary for a brush with greatness. That person could be no longer with us. I received, as a matter of fact, where is it? Is it here? I received a story in the past week from a gentleman who saw early in his life the artist formerly known as Prince.
Ooh.
Isn't that nuts? In all the time that you've lived in the Twin Cities, have you ever accidentally come across Prince?
I've just been to a concert. I've never been up close and next to him.
My wife went to a surprise concert by him. She went to see another artist, another band, and instead of that band showing up, Prince showed up and gave a concert in a small club.
Nice.
And your wife saw him?
And my wife saw him, yeah. Didn't shake hands with him.
This is another example of knowing somebody who saw somebody. I detect a pattern developing here.
Oh yeah, I got some brush with greatness through my wife. Yeah, she's had some brushes with greatness.
Kurt's involvement with the CleverCast is multi-purpose. We don't know if anything is funny unless we look at Kurt's screen out of the corner of our eyes. And if he's smiling or laughing, that means it's funny. And if it's not, that means it's not. And then, fast forward about 45 minutes. And when he's not smiling and he's squirming, that means that's equal to it ain't over till the fat lady sings. It ain't
That-
over until
That
the
is one of my
executive.
jobs. Yeah, my job is audience. I am audience of one. Yeah.
Until it ain't over till the executive producer squirms. The final, I think it's final, at least for now, purpose that Kurt serves is when he takes off his cap. It's an amazing reaction. Kurt, take off your cap and let's see what happens.
Poor Kurt.
That's what happens. Thank goodness he's a good sport and the ringleader of this operation.
Bob, did you wear a ball cap a lot? I'm trying to think back in the day when we worked together all the time. Did you wear a ball cap into the station a lot?
I did, but I realized about ball caps as I have since. Don't tell my sister this, who, by the way, painted this Jackson Pollock-like painting behind me. My sister in Texas, don't tell her that I said this, but ball caps, she's an animal lover. Ball caps, dogs, and bicycles. My son is a bicycle enthusiast. They're all for children. Don't let him know I said that, but they're all for children more often than not. Ball caps, bicycles, and dogs are for children. And
Oh,
I had animals earlier in my life. They're no longer with us. This is not a brush with greatness, by the way. So here's the missive that I received in the past week in advance of Brush with Greatness, Part 1, week at the CleverCast. He calls this is a longtime friend of the program and its radio incarnation, a relatively minor encounter. I beg to disagree. He says it took place in the mid-'80s. He was working at WWTC Radio at the time. Are you familiar with that radio station from back in the day?
yeah, WTC, yes.
We had just altered, he said, our format to take advantage of all the nationally charting local music coming out of the Twin Cities, especially the R&B artists, the majority of which were somehow connected to Prince. This rejiggering of the playlist provided a logical lateral association with First Avenue. The manager at the time was the legendary Steve McClellan. The Jeopardy answer to the question, does Jack Nicholson have a doppelganger? Apparently, Mr. McClellan looks a lot like Jack Nicholson. There was a record release and live performance in recognition of the debut album by Alexander O'Neill. I was on hand prior to my midnight to 6 a.m. shift to represent the radio station. My then wife and I made our way to the second level where there were several small VIP boxes that overlooked the stage. An elaborate buffet had been set up in the adjoining room. I was more interested in getting a good seat. Wait staff dutifully came by with gratis beverages and offers to make up a plate. I stuck to ginger ale as I was technically still on the clock. The place was pretty empty. They had just wrapped up a closed sound check, and I had yet to open the house for the general public. The backup band consisted mainly of current former members of The Time. You remember Morris Day and The Time?
Yes, love them.
Along with future members of the Revolution. They took the stage to jam for a good hour. As the place began to fill up on the dance floor below, one of the handlers of the event came over to find out who the hell I was and why was I sitting there. I explained my radio station connection, which seemed to satisfy him. About 15 minutes later, he returned. This time he was a bit more anxious. In a stumbling apology, he invoked the title of my favorite Charles Grodin book, It Would Be So Nice If You Weren't Here. He went on to inform us that while these seats were not technically reserved, we were actually sitting in an area that is held for someone in the event, should they care to stop by the club. Well, I think you can see what's coming here. We gathered our items to make our exit. It was a very small space, so I almost knocked over a small, very meek individual who was standing in the shadow just outside the door. I excused myself to him for being too bulky for indoor spaces, and we left the area. It was only in offering an apology that I recognized the diminutive VIP was in fact Prince Rogers Nelson.
Wow.
The man was only a year older than I was at the time. Again, he had the physique of a very young Martin Short.
That's about right.
Prince, mister. The only time I've ever seen Prince was when he came out of the stage at Target
Super Bowl.
Center.
Mm.
You want to talk back in the day. This is when, the stage was shrouded in fog or clouds or some sort of fake smoke, and up he would come through the center of the stage to start the show. So I think it's kind of fitting for a podcast that originates at least partially from the Twin Cities in Minnesota, that our first legitimate, genuine major league brush with greatness should be Prince.
Yeah, and many still say his Super Bowl performance is the best ever. So there you go, Minnesota's own.
Right. And he didn't lip sync like Rihanna, right?
Right. And it was in the middle of a rainstorm, as I recall. And they were saying, "Oh, Prince, are you going to be okay? Prince, it's raining out there, Prince." And he's like, "Bring it on. I'll do it. I want to do it for my fans." And he did.
Full disclosure, I was going to start today with a Snakes on the Plane audition with Neil Young. Due to technical difficulties, it wasn't possible to do, but it just was going to segue also into the fact that Neil Young is one of my local brushes with greatness here. I saw he and the missus leaning over the seawall at Zuma Beach. He has an album called Zuma from like the 70s. And then later that afternoon, the two of them passed in front of me as they walked down the beach in front of me in my beach chair. So you had a question, Kel?
You want me and Kurt to hum Heart of Gold while you're doing all this?
No, it was going to be Hurricane.
I love Hurricane.
Maybe someday. He was there that week. This was 2018 for a legendary assemblage of guests out Coachella way, except they called it Old Cella. It was Neil Young, Dylan, McCartney, The Who, and the Rolling Stones.
Wow, that is old.
On one stage, they called it Old Cella. I did not attend, but it was nice to have him in town. It kind of made sense that while he was in the general area for Old Cella, that he should stop by one of his old haunting grounds, Neil Young. So that's one of my big brushes with greatness.
Over the years, had you ever been to one of those big rock concert festivals? I mean, you weren't at Woodstock, where you were just knee-high to a grasshopper then.
I was not. I was at a pop festival that happened 2 or 3 weeks after Woodstock over Labor Day weekend, my freshman year in college.
Oh.
Most of the people who were at Woodstock were at this Louisville, Texas, a suburb of Dallas pop festival, plus a few added that were not at Woodstock, such as Led Zeppelin, Grand Funk Railroad, Rotary Connection with Minnie Riperton doing the lead singing.
Oh, nice.
It was a big deal, yeah. So all kinds of brushes with greatness there. I consider a brush with greatness someone you come across at the grocery store. Or like Martin Short. We saw Martin Short at Gelson's Grocery here in the Palisades, inching along with his cart at 0.04 miles per hour, just looking so decrepit.
Oh.
And then this past weekend, I want to say he was on Saturday Night Live helping Molly Shannon out with the monologue, and he has got all this energy stuff. And I'm going, man, is this the same guy?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You can turn it on.
The guy whose letter I read here about Prince did a lot of business, entertainment, travel a long time ago, and participated with Martin Short in a show at one of the Minnesota casinos. He held Martin Short in his arms and had Martin Short's thumb in his mouth, and they were supposed to be simulating the sound of bagpipes. That Martin Short was actually bagpipes, and my friend was blowing on his thumb and causing bagpipe sounds to come out. Yeah. It has to have happened. I'm not creative enough to make that up.
He does not have a filter. He's willing to just go out and do just about anything for a laugh. I do know that.
Yeah.
Jiminy Glick. I love Jiminy Glick.
Oh my gosh, that's just I can't have liquid in my mouth during Jiminy Glick or I'll do a spit take. Yeah, that's fabulous. Do you watch his series on Hulu called Only Murders in the Building? Have you ever seen that?
Yes, seen it. Very good.
I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah.
This is, this is the golden age of scripted TV. I'm sorry that the writers feel it necessary to go out on strike, although I support them wholeheartedly. Tomorrow night, we're taping this on Thursday, the 13th. Tomorrow night, Mrs. Maisel starts up again for that show's final season on Prime.
Right.
And then on Sunday, Barry on HBO starts its final season.
Have you watched
And
it?
then I won't be able to see it until Sunday.
Okay.
Because that's when it premieres.
Do you watch the first two seasons?
Yes, I have watched them both twice, yeah. And then another historic scripted TV moment was this past Sunday with the episode of Succession in which Logan Roy dies. Are
I
you
think
a
you have to say
Succession fan?
spoiler alert. Spoiler alert before you say he
Well,
died.
this is 4 days after the thing airs. I shouldn't. At a certain point, you shouldn't have to say spoiler alert anymore. You should just expect people to stay up to the times. I think.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I agree totally. I want to talk about it right away. And some people say, oh, wait, I haven't watched it yet. I'm binging it when the series is done. I just think that's silly. But
the LA Times made a lot of enemies this past Monday morning by running an obit for Logan Roy as if he was a real person.
Yeah.
That was a really cool thing to do, though. I thought it was just, once again, I just admire good writing and ideas for good writing. And that seemed to be one of them for me. But then again, I'd seen the show.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be a great book out there, as if somebody came up with obituaries for all the famous fictional characters.
Yeah. Okay. Here is the history, the brief history. Oh, no. I take it back. I'm going to save my brief history of Brushes with Greatness for this. I think this is the Lollapalooza. If you agree with me that the person in question here could wind up, when all is said and done, with the top 10 songwriters in history, regardless of, well, not classical, not like Beethoven, Mozart, that kind of thing, but popular music, 20th and 21st century. I believe he's one of the top 10 songwriters of all time, along with, Cole Porter, Irving Berlin, all the way up to McCartney. A friend of mine at Surdix in North Minneapolis, this would have been about 10 years ago, saw a jaundiced-looking, staggering, swearing drunk person. I thought there was a law against selling liquor to drunk people. Keith Richards.
Oh, my.
Isn't that nuts? Isn't that nuts?
It's nuts.
Can you imagine you go in thinking, oh, I'll get a six-pack on the way home? Keith Richards. He probably stocking up, he's on the road. And he's stocking up on Rebel Yell and all of his favorite hard well-drink alcohol.
I would think I had stumbled into a cigar shop and saw a cigar store Indian.
No, he's still alive. As a matter of fact, I hear that he's quit smoking, so there's hope for all of us, apparently. Keith Richards has decided.
All the stuff he's ingested over the years. My goodness.
Oh my God. Really, that's why I couldn't understand why Clapton was so anti-vaccine. I'm thinking, man, all the stuff you jammed into your arms in your lifetime, and you have a problem with the concept of a vaccine that could save your life? What's wrong with you?
I agree.
So, Kel, any brushes with greatness on your part? Athletic, entertainment?
Yeah, one of my favorites.
They come from?
As you know, I mean, you were in the Twin Cities for a number of years. You know about the Trent Tucker Golf Classic that takes place here. Trent Tucker, the former Minnesota Gopher, invites all the random celebrities and major athletes in the area. And so I went there with wife and newborn baby and my in-laws, and we took in an afternoon of watching the golf and watching celebrities. And we saw Mr. Kirby Puckett on a golf cart get off and make his two putt, what have you. Got off and he came over and was like near us, and we said, "Hey Kirby, could we get a picture?" And he said, "Sure." So we went over, and he even actually, kind of made baby talk with little Bianca, and we thought it was amazing. And she started squealing and crying and screaming. And Kirby's response is, "She ain't never seen a black man, has she?"
That's a good one. That's when you could tell that you were meeting the Kirby Puckett during the era of him having control of his faculties, because he lost them later.
Right. I thought you were going to think that I had ran into him at the Redstone restaurant.
Escorting women into the bathroom.
I wasn't escorting anybody anywhere.
Or, there are stories about him being seen in the parking lots of strip malls publicly urinating. I mean, the man just totally lost it.
Yeah, he
And
did.
it's a sad story, a sad ending. But yes, that's definitely that was like Dracula to the blood bank, wasn't it? You had all the celebrities there at the Trent Tucker tournament. Was he the only celebrity that you saw and
Probably the only one who talked
fraternized
to us.
with?
Probably the only one who talked to us that I recall. Actually, the only one who really made an impression on us. But yeah, we thought that was something.
You're certain that you didn't know a person who saw Kirby Puckett. You actually saw him and talked to him.
Yes, true.
Okay,
now,
good.
I also saw Michael Jordan was there too. He was on a golf cart. I don't know if he was. What was his cookie? Was his wife, right?
If you say so.
Or was that? No, that's Magic. That was Magic Johnson's wife. Whoever Michael's wife was, he was on a golf cart with two women. They were not his wife, and he seemed to have his hands wrapped around both of them. So
nice.
Didn't talk to Michael, but I think he had his hands full.
Okay. No pun intended.
Yes.
Here's a strange kind of brush with greatness. A person who I've never met, who met a celebrity.
Oh.
And this was an let's see, how did this go? Yeah. It was an ophthalmologist, or it was an ear doctor of some sort. And my then wife went to him for an examination. She was a reporter and TV anchor at the time. So during the ear exam, she says to him, you know what? Something's really been bugging me. And I know you're not a doctor for this kind of thing, but I think I feel a lump in my breast. Would you mind examining me? Now, usually that's the start of a Penthouse Forum letter. But he did examine her.
Oh my!
And gave her some peace of mind, and she left there, feeling much better about herself and with her ear problem repaired, I assume. But I can only imagine that he gets home and puts the overcoat on the hook and, honey, I'm home, and the wife from the kitchen says, dinner's ready. How'd it go today? You won't believe this, dear, but I met the Channel 5 TV anchor reporter, Kevin Berger. And she asked me to examine her breasts.
Amazing.
Come on, you're just making that up. Don't you think that's one of the more unorthodox brushes with greatness of all time?
A little bit unorthodox. It's almost better than one of Kurt's stories, but not quite.
Yep. I started my brushes with greatness at an early age. I was probably not yet 10 years old, but I was being driven to my grandparents' house, which was near the physical facility of the NBC TV affiliate in the area. And I saw a TV anchorman, a local TV personality employed by that station, mowing his lawn. My little jaw just dropped, and that's when I caught the brush with greatness bug.
Oh.
And then later I saw a local high school basketball player who played in my own suburb and led the team to state title contention, what have you. He was mowing his lawn. And that was, I don't know.
Did they ever mow each other's lawn? That's the question I have for you. Because that would have blown my mind.
The similarity is, it's stunning. But that's when my brush with greatness career began. Mm-hmm. And then shortly after that, during my senior year in high school, my friends and I took a bus down to Houston to see an NFL, actually it might have been AFL at that time. Maybe they hadn't merged, but it was an exhibition game at the Astrodome. Mm-hmm. And it was the Jets and Houston Oilers. And I bumped into the man who basically sent me to college. Joe Namath gave me an interview. I wrote it up for the high school paper, entered it in some competitions, and before you know it, journalism scholarship, a free ride to a private school. Well,
Joe Namath.
Yes.
The man who on national television in his late 60s, early 70s said, I really want to kiss you right now.
Oh, I thought you were going to mention the Medicare commercials or whatever they are.
Oh, that too.
They were all over the most terrifying 5 words in the language in the past 2 or 3 years, if you ask me, are, hey folks, Joe Namath here. That's when you know he's going to try to sell you some Medicare.
So you
Did those,
literally talked to Joe Namath, Joe
I
Willie.
did. A lot
Wow.
of what he had to say was profane, but I turned it into.
Well,
I kind of molded the profane statements into semi-fictitious answers for an interview that ran in the school paper, the Buffalo Tales, because we
oh,
were the Buffaloes, Fulton City,
yeah, that was
and
prolific.
yeah, and so it led to college scholarship. Joe Namath.
Wow.
How about that?
And you learn from the best because you can sling some good swears if you really want to. I know you're usually above
You know
that,
what
but
though? He might have been working on his alcoholism even at that stage. This was before Bachelor's 3 and before Super Bowl 3. Oh, and you'll love this. I got the bug. So at halftime, I went back down to the Jets locker room area, put myself in the middle of the players as they re-entered the field for the second half,
what?
and stayed for most of the third quarter until someone realized that I didn't have
You
a
were
credential on
you
and
were a
escorted
brazen
me off the field.
you were a brazen teenager.
I was. I was
Wow.
relentless.
See,
I was a
I'm surprised you didn't end up in the Houston Oilers locker room sharing a beer with Bum Phillips.
was I was a young cub reporter, intrepid reporter. I could not be denied. I had a mission.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. It was it was just otherworldly vast, the freaking Astrodome. You know, you're standing there on the field, on the sidelines, and you look around, you just go, how can these guys concentrate on the game with all these people watching? It's unbelievable.
It's
So,
true.
you know, once in a lifetime type deal, and led to 4 years of free private school. So I can't gripe. And you're right. I'd forgotten about that anecdote where he came on to Susie Colbert on national TV and really embarrassed himself, embarrassed her.
You could see the liquor breath in the frozen air. Just
Can I kiss you? Yeah. You know, at the time, you say he'll never live it down, but he did. He cleaned
oh,
up, and now he's a spokesman for old people who need insurance.
oh
So God
yeah.
love him. So after Namath, um, I had a job. Well, it was a job in radio, and I was overpaid, and I could afford to leave airplanes that were about to leave the gate if someone came on the airplane who I assumed would get most of the coverage if the airplane went down. So one time, Jerry Cooney, the boxer, came on, and I left the plane. And another time, Squire Friedel, the guy in the Toyota commercials, who would jump up and they would freeze frame him. Whoa, 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 whoa. You want it, you got it, Toyota,
Oh
Squire
yeah.
Friedel.
Okay.
And so I said, well, you know, if this plane crashes, Squire Friedel will get all the ink, and so I'm leaving. So I left the plane.
That makes sense.
Um, and so those were brushes with greatness. When you see
I
them on the
thought
plane,
I thought
hmm,
for sure you were talking about an airport. I thought you were going to say a certain former football player came hurtling through the airport, jumping over suitcases, the one and only OJ Simpson, but that didn't
no,
happen. Never met
never
OJ.
saw him in person. No, another airport. Very good of you to point this out. Airport sighting that just now comes to me that is not a part of my list. This was the guy who. How does it go? Poppy Bush was in the hospital, and Al Haig, Secretary of State or something at the time, saw fit to announce to the press, and these were his words: I am in charge here at the White House. Well, I don't think he was, but
No.
Al Haig was a very commanding presence, and it's guys like him or guys of his age range who would be able to commandeer the little golf carts in airports that take old people to the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And one came screeching around me and pulled up to the gate. This is before 9/11, obviously, where you couldn't go to the gate unless you were a um, customer of the
Sure.
airlines.
Yeah.
It was freaking Al Haig. I couldn't
Al
believe my
Haig.
eyes. Alexander Haig.
Oh my.
Nutty.
I tell you, you talk
Uh,
about brush with greatness, but there's like that means you're kind of like there's a kind of a softness to it. But I tell you, if a guy literally almost runs you over, that there should be a term more than brush. That's almost like,
collision.
collision with greatness.
Collision with
Correct.
greatness. Yeah. I was never in any kind of wreck with
That would have been a story.
a celebrity.
A
Yeah, it
fender
would.
bender and who
Oh,
pops
that
out, but
they would have been sued into next week because I would sense their deep pockets, and I'd have to get a lawyer who would want to get 10% of that.
I didn't know you're so litigious.
Oh, are you kidding me? I'm about to sue UCLA Health. This is
I
a
thought you
quick
were saying you were going to
sidebar.
sue me.
Quick sidebar, if I may.
Yes.
The testosterone that I use for my monthly shots is in a little tube. Contains 10 shots per tube that I get monthly. So, well, if you saw any mummy movies, the mummy had to have tanna leaves for energy and heartbeat and whatnot. Testosterone, the same thing with me. And so this new doctor of mine at Palisades told me, "Oh, I can't shoot you with that here. That's contraband." And I'm thinking, I'm not a druggie or a drug dealer. I've had these injected in my butt all over this city for, I don't know, 10 years. And if you want to talk contraband, I haven't seen penicillin in 50 years, but I'm not peddling that. This is something that I need to keep me going for motor skills and so on.
See, that sounds like an ad right there.
And libido, that's also very important.
I got it. Basically, I think Bob Yates, a man's man, taking testosterone, but I think that's what happens.
In his 70s, enjoy your youth and that vim and vigor while you can, because in your 70s it's going to drop off like a baseball off the table. I guarantee you. So I wrote UCLA a nasty letter a couple of nights ago about how I was going to get my attorney and get this rectified.
Oh yes.
So yes, I am litigious. That's your litigious digression there.
All
right. The magician, the illusionist Ricky Jay. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, he does a lot of close-up card magic.
Exactly. Saw him on an airplane just a few months before he died. There are definite brushes with greatness to be had in airports and airplanes. But I'm sure you already knew that.
Do you find that somebody has a brush with you and all of a sudden they die within the next couple of months? Are you death?
Am I a hex?
Yes.
I've never been told that. No, I've been told it's something usually that rhymes with that, which would be sex. But no, I'm not familiar with the Bob Hex.
All right.
At a golf tournament, here you had the Trent Tucker golf tournament.
Yes.
This was somebody else's in Stillwater. And I met Sam Shepard, the late Sam Shepard, who left us in 2017. This would have been the late 1990s. He hadn't gotten his teeth fixed yet. He still had the discolored front tooth. He was on a health kick. He was pulling a pull cart. And I got to meet Sam Shepard, and then saw him on another occasion in Stillwater at the Acapulco Mexican restaurant on Highway 36, if that's still there. And he was with a couple of Baryshnikov's kids that he and Jessica Lange at the time were, overseeing. And he took up a doggy box. He was dressed in his Sam Shepard denim outfit that we associate with him. My father was a child of the Depression, and his goal as a businessman was to get to the point where he could waste stuff, because the conservation he knew as a kid, he found to be, like mentally, emotionally crippling. So he left a lot of food on his plate, Bob did, once he made it big. And when I would ask, hey, should we get a doggy box? He would say, don't let me hear you say those words. I want this food to stay here on the table. Maybe the people backstage in the kitchen will eat it. Well, I saw Sam Shepard take a doggy box, and his plays were being performed around the world that night, I feel sure. So I thought from that moment on, if it's good enough for Sam Shepard, it's good enough for me. So I got a doggy box today. Got a doggy box today at a restaurant across from Pep Boys. It's all glamour.
Yes.
This life in Los Angeles.
So your father was a child of the Depression. Does that make you a grandchild of the Depression?
I suppose it does.
Wow.
But fortunately, I don't have to, thanks to him, ironically enough, and my mom, I don't have to suffer those indignities. How about this one?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
You can tip as many concessionaires as you want to.
Well, that's exactly right. Everybody needs help. This was at the Malibu farmers market a few years ago. I saw Dick Van Dyke.
No.
Dick Van Dyke just turned 97. He has a wife that's about 40 years younger than he is. And I was reminded of this when I what sent me to that page? It was somebody's Wikipedia page. I know what it was. It was a David Lynch documentary on the Criterion Channel web page, and it sent me to the Wikipedia page for Jack Nance, who was in Eraserhead, a David Lynch movie, one of the early ones.
Sure.
He also turned up in Twin Peaks. He was the guy who said wrapped in plastic. Okay. Go to Jack Nance's Wikipedia page and you'll see that how did this go? He married the daughter of Jerry Van Dyke. Jerry, my mother, the car Van Dyke. She was a drug-addicted porn actress who committed suicide.
Wow.
Jerry Van Dyke's daughter.
Wow.
Dick Van Dyke's niece was in a hell of a shape and is in the next world. Isn't that something?
I've seen some
How
pictures.
brushes with greatness can send you down these rabbit holes.
Oh my. I've seen some pictures of the current Dick Van Dyke at 97, and he looks like a pretzel. My goodness, he's all different shape.
The beard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then he had a terrible car crash a couple of weeks ago in the rain. He hit a wall and it's all bloody and stuff. Yeah, it's horrible.
I was watching, believe it or not, I'm watching those old time TV shows. You told me about Sanford and Son a couple of weeks ago, being on one of those, and I was watching a Columbo episode, and Dick Van Dyke showed up as the villain, and I was like, he was so typecast as a good guy, you know, whether it was in Mary Poppins or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, of course, the Dick Van Dyke Show, but I've never seen him as like an evil kind of killer, and it was so fascinating to watch.
Yeah, same thing with the Jeff Bridges, who I've always thought of as a good guy in movies.
Yeah,
he was in a movie called The Vanishing, where he was a total villain. They love challenges like that. They love being bad guys. They jump at the chance to portray a baddie.
Play against type.
One other Sam Shepard note, if I may, there's a new book coming out as close to the definitive biography of Sam Shepard as you can get, given how many people still refuse to talk about him posthumously. And the person who wrote the review of the book for the Washington Post was actor, director, poet, documentarian, jack of all trades, Ethan Hawke. And Ethan Hawke had his own brush with greatness type paragraphs about associations, professional associations with Sam Shepard. In one of them, he said that during a rehearsal for a Sam Shepard play, Sam came over and started asking him about a liquor called Maker's Mark, what he thought of Maker's Mark. And then one thing led to another, and Sam says, let's just blow this off and go get drunk. And Ethan Hawke couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had no idea that Sam's problem with alcohol was that pronounced. I remember that day at the golf tournament in Stillwater that I met him at. I heard later that he was trying to talk up among friends or new friends a private plane trip to Las Vegas to get drunk and gamble. He was just a wild man. Well, it's no surprise to me that I think it was early 70s. He was hauled in Kentucky for a DUI, later died of ALS. Well, he was a mess at the end. It's kind of sad.
As I recall, drinking and betting are two of your favorite things.
That's where Sam and I had the divergent path there. See, he did feel bad though about how things wound up with Jessica Lange, who would not put up with that kind of behavior. And they went their separate ways. And there's a documentary about him and a friend of his, Johnny Dark is his name.
Oh,
I think the documentary is called Shepard and Dark. And they interview Sam Shepard about that phase of his life. And he gets broken up because he's ashamed of how he handled things with Jessica Lange, because things had been so nice, when things were going well. But then his addictions got in the way. That's the long story short.
All I know is there are many of the times back when we used to do the radio show where you said, Kel, let's blow this place and go get drunk. I remember that like it was yesterday.
That actually sounds like me. Sounds like something I would have said back then. Let's see. Josh Brolin. This is the Brolin's son, the son of the Brolin who's married to Barbra Streisand.
Yeah.
Opened the door for one of my children and I at Malibu Starbucks. Charles Kimbrough, who is the anchor on Murphy Brown.
Ooh.
was seen at that very same place. Did you watch Murphy Brown?
Very little. No,
Okay.
it was not on the top of my list.
He's no longer with us. Rob Reiner,
Oh,
who supposedly despised chains and opposed the Whole Foods in Malibu when that movement was going on. Apparently, he made an exception for Starbucks because I saw him there at the Malibu Plaza Colony
did you
Starbucks.
pitch him a script?
I did not. I was just in awe that I was looking at Meathead. I was looking at the adult version of Meathead, and I don't know. I was frozen. I couldn't
I
say a
get it. You were
word.
starstruck. I get it.
Bo Hopkins, an actor I saw in the Palisades Starbucks. The Palisades Starbucks, I'll tell you something. That was a treasure trove. You could look out the window this one day. That would have been what, 2013, and I see this guy with this little guy with this rooster hair, and then the woman next to him is about as tall as a zebra, and they're walking toward the Starbucks. And I'm going, oh my God, that's Rod Stewart, and it was Rod Stewart and his
Rod
wife at
Stewart.
the time, this 7-foot blonde woman, and they walk in and stand in line to order coffee just like anybody else, and then he goes over to the little chemistry tray there where you add your this and that,
Yep.
sugar and whatever else. And I told the person next to me, I said, what would you pay me to go up there and with my cup of coffee to dress it up and stand next to him and go, oh, Maggie, I wish I'd never seen your face. And and, and just singing to myself, oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. You're Rod Stewart, aren't you? You had a hit with that song. Never mind.
You
Yeah.
know, I've noticed you've been running into a lot of men, mostly men. Would you say, are there any beautiful women you've run
Yes.
into? Oh,
Same Palisades Starbucks, Diane Keaton.
oh,
Saw her in line. And then I sat outdoors at the Starbucks at a table next to Charlie Sheen's former wife, Denise Richards. Are you familiar
ooh,
with her
she's a
work?
nice piece of chicken.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, she was one of the stars of Wild Things, if you recall that movie.
Now, that's the term brush with greatness I worry about because you getting a little too close, a little too handsy, you might
Yeah.
brush against, and then the police might be called.
Yes. Fortunately, that has not happened.
Oh, good.
But also, fortunately, there are famous athletes in that Palisades Starbucks to break that kind of thing up. This again was probably 10 years ago. I saw at that Starbucks in the Palisades the only black person who lives in the Palisades. His name is Sugar Ray Leonard.
Sugar Ray.
Yes, isn't that nuts?
Well,
And it's so weird to hear the person over the microphone go, Ray, your sandwich is ready. Ray, your sandwich. And then one day they go, Lance, your breakfast sandwich is ready. It was Lance Armstrong.
no.
Isn't that? I can't make it up, man.
Sans
He had just,
testicle.
as a matter of fact, he had just been found out for doping. He
Mm.
was with his lawyer. He and his attorney went everywhere together. And so they were there that morning in the Palisades Starbucks. Isn't that
Mm.
wild?
So when Sugar Ray was getting his coffee, did he get sugar in it?
I didn't look that closely, but I think that's an
Very
excellent
meta.
angle on a human interest piece on celebrities captured visually in captivity as to
Right.
what they put in their coffee.
Exactly.
I have another uh, femme fatale from the entertainment world who I saw. This was at, let's see, it's called Point Doom Village in Malibu. I saw Harrison Ford's wife, the former star of Ally McBeal, Callista Flockhart.
How
How's
could you
that for
see
a
her?
brush with greatness?
She
Huh?
she's so very skinny. I could have
She's
just
like a
seen
stick.
looked
She is.
right
She's
through
like a
her.
stick figure. I don't know how she does it.
You wouldn't want to
I don't know
brush
whether
against her. You might break her.
she's like an honorary Biafran. She's so skinny. Now, what would you call this kind of brush with greatness? This would be the kind of brush suffered by a person who's already great, talking about a brush with someone greater.
Whoa, you just blew
I
my
know, isn't
mind.
that nuts? Here's the story. This would be the 60s or 70s, a dinner party in Hollywood, long table. Um, all the Illuminati are there. Mike Nichols may have hosted it for all I know. Warren Beatty was there. So down the table, the subject of conversation for some reason goes to Eleanor Roosevelt. Did you ever meet Eleanor Roosevelt? They ask each other this, these celebrities.
Wow.
Warren Beatty, so goes the story. Warren Beatty speaks up and says, as a matter of fact, I have met Eleanor Roosevelt. And Mike Nichols says, did you fuck her?
Oh, oh, those celebrity parties.
That's the one where you have to kind of keep an eye out for Kurt. Is he laughing? Is he smiling? That's when you know it's funny. And as it turns out, apparently it is funny because he was. As a matter of fact, he did kind of bend with the smile and the laugh there. Yeah.
I need to work on my Kenny Guffaw.
Kenny Guffaw.
You know what? That's just outrageous enough. Mike Nichols was just outrageous enough that had to have happened. Yes, actually, I did meet Eleanor Roosevelt. Mike Nichols says, did you fuck her? Because, Warren Beatty's reputation at that time kind of preceded him. He was kind of man about town. You didn't leave Warren Beatty's presence without leaving some sort of DNA on his person. And so I think it's a legitimate question. It's just that the theater of the mind, in my mind, it's kind of nightmarish. The thought of Warren Beatty mounting the wife of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. If you've ever seen any pictures of Eleanor Roosevelt, you'll know what I'm talking about. We've spoken, have we not, about my having bumped into the man that the entertainer who many believe is the equivalent of Mark Twain, Adam Sandler. Saw him outside.
Well, now I think you're just making this up
Plaza,
now.
Starbucks. No, it was at night, as a matter of fact. I've got my feet on a table. I've got the laptop up. I've finished my work. I'm doing something entertainment-wise with the laptop, and I hear this scudding and jingling coming toward me. I look over the top of the laptop. He's got his keys hanging out of his khakis on some sort of chain, all right? And I see that it's Mark Twain, and I said, or as he was known at the time, Adam Sandler. And I said, hey. And he said, hey. And he just kept walking. He never broke stride.
Wow.
So I not only brushed with that greatness, but I conversed with him briefly.
Oh.
Hey and hey. Yeah.
I'm sure he remembers it.
I shouldn't have come down so hard on the lad last week or the week before, whichever it was, about the Mark Twain Award.
Yeah.
Because he is a very underrated actor. I don't know whether you've seen the movie Punch Drunk Love, a P.T. Anderson production.
Yeah.
But he should have gotten an Oscar nomination for that at the very least. He was really astonishing in that role as a neurotic, annoying little guy.
Are you eating crow?
A little bit, yeah. In retrospect.
Oh,
many times when I'm hard on someone, especially hard on someone I've never met, only said hey to, I'll think about what I said and I'll think, no, I should reconsider and apologize in the next podcast. So that's what I'm doing now. He was fantastic in Punch Drunk Love. Please see that movie.
Like in the newspaper, you're putting a retraction in at the bottom page, and that's what you're doing right now.
It is. It's a correction. It's a disclaimer. That's right. Saw Mel Gibson at two grocery stores, one Whole Foods and one at Ralph's.
Was he yelling racial epithets?
No, he wasn't. He was actually kind of subdued. He was kind of low key. Oh. This was during the first week or two of COVID, and people were, rushing into stores and making off with dozens of rolls of toilet paper.
Oh yeah.
But he was in the produce section and stood next to me in line at the Ralph's. Are you familiar with Ralph's Grocery?
Yeah, we don't have any here, but I know of them. Yes.
Ralph's offers the card that Jeff Lebowski of The Big Lebowski used as identification instead of a driver's license, if you'll recall that movie.
That's right.
And that's where I saw Mel Gibson, or one of the places I've seen Mel Gibson. I've never been to his church. He has one. I think we've discussed that already.
And yet you still didn't pitch him a script.
Saw Dylan for a split second. In the 3 years I lived next to him, I saw him one time. I'm doing my morning constitutional. He's roaring off of his property, in one of those huge, I think the President of the United States has one, is driven around in one, a huge black thing they call the Beast. It's like a, I don't know, what does Chevy or Ford make, that giant, it's not an SUV, it's something else. It's just a giant freaking battleship-sized motor vehicle. And Dylan is driving about 85 miles an hour in a 35 zone. And
Wow.
I'm thinking, wow, I just missed my chance to make a lot of money if I jumped out in front of that vehicle.
Oh,
Man, Bob Dylan kills.
that's a real brush with greatness.
Bob Dylan kills local, man. Well, that would be a collision with
A
greatness,
collision
as
with
we
greatness.
stated a while ago. I'm searching here for
You're searching.
a coup de grace
Ah,
with which to end part one of Brush with Greatness, and then we'll wrap it up with Jim Leinfelder next week. He
I'm
has the
beginning to
best
wonder
I've
if
ever
this guy
heard.
even exists. Do you think he really, I mean, because each week you're promoting him that he's the following week, and we're still
He's not a
waiting.
phantom. He actually exists, but he's a human being with conflicts, with
Oh,
scheduling conflicts.
oh,
I won't allow my vacation to the Twin Cities to get in the way of the podcast. I'll be participating from a hotel room 1 week from today.
okay.
And Jim will be coming to us from his home. And seriously, you will not believe Jim Leinfelder's brushes with greatness.
Will I be knocked on my ass?
You might actually veer out of the frame, and we might hear one of those radio theater type of sound effects of a body hitting the floor. You seriously, you're not going to believe what you hear next week from Jim Leinfelder, who, if people don't know, award-winning local and national news correspondent for a variety of networks during his professional years, and now he is a retired house husband, father of one, but with some amazing stories to tell. One of which is he talked to Keith Olbermann
Keith
on
Olbermann.
national television live when Keith Olbermann had his nightly show on MSNBC. This was the night of the Mississippi River Bridge collapse.
Oh,
And Jim was covering it as a stringer for NBC and was talking on the phone live to Keith Olbermann as the recovery efforts were underway that night. And Jim coined the term grim miracle for the fact that more people's lives weren't lost as those cars went down into the river from the collapsed bridge, and then the people below that the cars, fell on, and so on and so forth. And I don't think I'm stealing his thunder. I
I
think I've
hope you're
told
not, because
audiences before about this.
if this was his walk-off shot and you just threw it away like this, I don't know. He's not going to be.
No, this is something that he's not going to bring up because he's already told me about the top half dozen or so.
Okay.
And he and I have discussed the Mississippi River Bridge collapse coverage before in a variety of broadcast venues. So this is old hat for him. I just thought that was an amazing story
It is.
to be in town for, just by happenstance. My son had ridden a bicycle over that bridge like 5 minutes before it collapsed.
I did too. I drove my car over it probably 10 minutes before that. So yeah, there was a brush with disaster.
And you remember how they cordoned that area off? You could only see it from like the old Guthrie or something. I forget how that goes, but that was a real moment of crisis.
It was
for infrastructure fans everywhere, let alone Minnesotans.
All right. So, what's your playoff shot? You said you had one to send us off, a flourish, didn't you have?
Oh boy, you asked for women. Had I seen any women? I gave you a few names already.
Yes.
Saw Gloria Allred at CVS. Gloria Allred, the feminist attorney
at the CVS.
At the CVS, yes. Also, Jamie Lee Curtis at the CVS, the now Academy Award-winning Jamie Lee Curtis. That's correct.
Does nobody go to the Walgreens anymore?
There's no Walgreens in the Palisades. We don't want those po' boys around us.
Hey,
no, there's Walgreens in Santa Monica. If you want to go to Walgreens, let's see. Oh, how about this? Since he's been in the news and has a best-selling book about his problems, we'll end with this. Matthew Perry, formerly of Friends. I saw him at the Pepperdine University Starbucks.
Okay.
you would never have known that the man's colon had burst or was on its way to bursting, or that his teeth were falling out,
Oh,
or that his right arm was falling off. I mean, he was just self-destructing, Matthew Perry, if you believe these travails he described in his book.
yeah, he was a
That's pretty.
mess.
$1 million a week, man. That's not bad.
No,
That's a pretty good brush with greatness, and I think one that is colossal enough to send us off for the week in part one of Brush with Greatness, brought to you by Better Butter. Better Butter always covers the spread, and the spread you're looking at tonight is the NHL game, Carolina and Florida. Go under the total, under 6.5 goals. And we'll get into the sea salt part of it next week, because I just think the whole thing is a swindle. You know, how am I supposed to tell the difference between table salt, rock salt, kosher salt, and sea salt? I mean, really, is it necessary to insult my intelligence?
insult your salt intelligence. Insane.
Are you seeing though? Do you have butter in your household?
I have
And
a
is
little
sea
bit.
salt?
I can't believe it's not butter.
Is sea salt mentioned on the container?
I'm sure it
Contains
is
sea
in
salt.
some. I haven't thought to read it, but I'll
How
check
is
it out
sea
tonight.
salt?
I'll report to you next week.
I do know someone who claims that there are sea salt beds in parts of Europe where the sea salt is derived and then distributed to companies with sea salt needs for their products. I just don't understand the need to insult my intelligence.
Every night at dinner, my wife says, "I didn't put enough salt. Here's some more salt for you." And I'm like, "No, she's trying to kill me. I don't need the extra salt." So, thank you.
Final butter joke for the week, I promise.
Butter and salt.
And this was going to be in the multiphasic exam, but I'll frame it in another way. Did you see the motion picture Last Tango in Paris?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do
Great
you remember the so-called butter scene?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Do you think that scene would have been more like health conscious or encouraging good health if Brando had used parquet?
Parquet. And it said it like that. Parquet.
Get the butter. Get the butter. I'm sorry, all we have is parquet. All right. Parquet is fine.
Wait, what if
Yeah.
Brando had been with those snakes on the plane? I wonder what that would have sounded like.
I think we've already done that
Oh, yeah.
with Don Corleone.
Oh, sorry.
You're running afoul of me. I may have to hand you over to Joe Tacopina. And we'll play the Joe Tacopina. All right. Thanks to both of you. Thanks to everyone who's watching, listening, what have you. And we will see you next week from, I will not name the hotel, but I will be doing my share from a hotel, from a bed in a hotel room in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'll narrow it down to that. And we'll continue Brush with Greatness. And Jim Leinfelder will join us. And you will be glad that we tantrically delayed his appearance.
Oh.
Because this is bigger than Keith Richards, bigger than Sam Shepard, bigger than Matthew Perry, what Jim Leinfelder is going to share with you. I promise.
I wonder if he met the Pope.
Not Pope level. Pope is probably Pope and President. It's beneath Pope and President, but not much.
Next level. Al Haig.
Not an elected official, not someone, blessed by God with a position in Catholicism, but darn close. So be on hand next week for the Bob and Kel CleverCast, signing off for now.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.